Welcome back to Otto's Garage. I've just got back home and the parcel that I've been waiting for nearly 3 months has arrived. And this is it. So what we've got here basically from our good friends in China is a bike set of clocks. So it's got a rev counter and digital speedo. It's got indicators built into it, and then things like the parking brake switch and stuff like the high beam and blah blah blah, and a fuel gauge is in there as well. So that is good. It's a nice compact size and it's got a decent bit of weight to it. It feels like a quality bit of kit, which is nice. So what I do have to do is basically work out what these wires are. It comes with a speed sensor magnet, so that's got to be fixed on somewhere or other, and I'm thinking possibly the back of the CV joint on the front drive shaft. I know for a fact that's what plugs into that. And then the other ones that we've got basically are going to be stripped off the plugs, and I'll work my way through the colours and see exactly which ones go where, and then we'll just tap those into the various sensors off the car. Happy days. These are the clocks that are off the motorcycle that we had a look at that arrived at home, and we're going to fit them into the dash now. So I've had to cut a piece of alley and we're just going to see how they mount up. That's the view from the back of the factory dash, and you can see where those vents are, and here would be the normal position for the fan and stuff that we've got on the car. What I've done is I've cut a plate of alley in the back there, and move those out of the way a little bit, and then basically we're going to cut some openings in that so that the clock can be mounted there basically. And then what we'll do, we'll also cut a couple of holes each side so we can put the oil pressure gauge in there, and then I've also got a turbo pressure gauge to go in as well. So some of the information is on the clock. I think we've got fuel gauge on there, obviously the rev counter, speed, blah blah blah, indicator lights, high beam, and I think there's a brake warning light, parking brake warning light on there as well, which is kind of bizarre for a bike, but anyway, never mind. I have worked out what these connectors do. All we need are these two here, which is speed, and I think one of them's revs, and then the other ones are all to do with indicators, lights, blah blah blah. These ones here we're not going to need, these 6, because these are actually gear indicator wires. So obviously with the normally on a bike they'd have gear output on that, so we won't have that information on here, but I'm sure I can work that out by where my hand is on the gear stick. Okay, so there we are. I've superimposed the position of the gauges there now. So we've got our oil pressure, the clock's in the middle, and I think that one's going to be the turbo gauge on that side. So what I need to do now is cut some holes first with our friendly hole saw, and then we're going to drill into the corners of these with a reasonably sized bit to recreate the arc of the corners, and then I'll have to just trim these bits out with some deft work on the angle grinder. So let's see how we get on. Well, after a bit of grinding and cutting, this is what we have got. So that basically is the gauge in the alley backing. Don't worry about the white, that'll peel off, that's just plastic protector. But it does mean that we've now got a gauge mounted down into that, and I'll just put the oil next to it. Obviously we'll have one on that side as well. It hasn't arrived yet, but that is basically it. That's our critical information, if you like, right in front of the driver behind the steering wheel. So I've just got to tidy that up now, and then we can basically peel off that backing and we can mount it in our good friend the instrument binnacle down there. Okay, I've managed to get the alley dash panel fixed into the instrument binnacle, this is what we've now got. So basically, these are obviously the holes that we cut out before for the various gauges, but now we've actually got that mounted. We can see that we can drop in that's the oil pressure gauge on there, and then this other one is going to be for our good friend, the rev counter and speedo, etc. So that's going to go in there, something like that. Still haven't got my turbo gauge, but don't worry, that'll be coming. It's putting me under a bit of pressure, that one is. Gear shift, bulkhead, gator. Now you try saying that quickly. Anyway, that's prone to perishing, basically. It's where the gear selector rods go through the bulkhead, and you've got that kind of oval rubber with 2 holes in it. Now we've only got 1 lever now because of our gear shift tower, so we don't need the other rod. However, the gear rubber was completely perished on it, and it's gone basically. So this is what we've got now, and it's basically a hole in the bulkhead, that oval hole down there, and this is the gear selector rod coming through. So what we've got to do is fabricate a flexible barrier. So it's going to be rubber. We like rubber. And what I've come up with is this. I've got a piece of rubber sheet that's quite thick, and basically what I've done is I've taken the end of a CV joint gator and discard that bit, and this is the piece that we need. So I've made a hole in said rubber sheet, and you can just see there how it kind of just about fits tightly round the gator, and then I've just cut the back of the gator off. So looking from the engine side, that is basically what you'll see. Obviously most of this will be inside the bulkhead, inside the car I should say, but that'll be what you see, and then the gear selector comes through that little hole there, Mavis. So that's the way we're going to go with it, and then I can make another little hole on this side, and that won't need anything like the same gator on it, because that is going to have a rod coming through for the brake bias, but it will need to be big enough that it can spin freely. That's the plan. I've got a little bit sidetracked, and it's kind of a job that has got to be done, but yeah, you didn't want to start it late at night, but I did. Anyway, what I've actually been looking at is the loom for the fuel injection system sensors, going back to the ECU, etc. Now, although we may well be putting a different ECU on it, all of the sensors that are on the engine side of thing are still going to be required. So I think for now what I'm going to do is I've been through the loom, had a look at it, and I'm going to put the original engine side back on for now. It may well be that the loom gets replaced in future, and I might even be able to plug the original ECU in and just see if we can get the damn thing to turn over, which would be nice. So in any event, this is what we've been looking at. Basically, we've got the sensors on the end here, and I've marked them up for where they go. And I believe that this is a Delta or an HF four-wheel drive loom as opposed to a Prisma one, because it's got a knock sensor on it. And we haven't actually got a knock sensor on the Prisma engine. So that's redundant, which isn't a major issue. And then we've basically got pretty much all the same stuff. We've got the Dizzy, idle control valve, I can't even see that one because I'm now bloody taped over it. Coolant temperature. That one goes to the TPS, that's the throttle position sensor. And then working our way back down it, we've got the 4 injector terminals, and then this is the temperature sensor for the inlet manifold in there. And basically further on back in, that is our manifold pressure sensor down there. This is the main live feed, which is going to come from the bus bar. So that's the live feed, which basically powers the whole thing up. And then we've got that one goes down to the flywheel sensor down the bottom there. I've still got to fit that yet, which is fine. And then this long snake down here with the didgeridoo on the end of it, that's actually the O2 sensor, so that goes in the exhaust at a later date. We haven't got the exhaust fitted at the moment, but never mind. And then there's a couple of earth shielding wires. So basically wherever you've got these sensors, if you look here, that basically has got a shielding wire around it. So that's very similar to your coax on your TV basically. It just stops interference from external sources getting to it. So that goes to earth as well. And I think there's a couple of other ones up here as well. These are shield wires, I believe, as well. So that's cool. So I've fed that back through the bulkhead over there, and we are going to try and see where we go with it. Oh, just one other thing. We've got a couple of relays here. And the fuel pump relay is irrelevant because obviously I've bypassed the whole of the fuel pump system. The injector relay, not only does that send power to the injectors, etc., it also kind of distributes the power down to the ECU and across to the fuel pump and stuff. So that one is going to be required. However, I am going to get a new relay for it and not rely on the one which is nearly 40 years old. And then this is just a 15 amp fuse, which basically protects it. So there we go. Let's get stuck into it. Well, that's another evening of getting sidetracked. So I started off having a look at, I can't even remember what I was looking at earlier, but in any event, we dropped in to put in the, Well, there's another evening of getting sidetracked. I started off by looking at that rubber gear gaiter into the bulkhead there, and I was walking past the loom for the injection, etc., and I thought, I'll just have a quick look at that. Anyway, I spent probably the last 3 hours just sorting out what goes where, cleaning it, and then installing it as well. And this is how far I've got with it. So basically, all of the front terminals and the shielding are all done on here. So we've got the idle control valve, the dizzy, coolant temperature, underneath there through to the TPS on that side. And then basically into the new injectors underneath, they're all connected. The manifold air temperature is also in as well. The other two injectors there. I've just laid this lead out now at the moment, and that is down to the oxygen sensor, the O2 sensor down there for the exhaust, which obviously we can't fit at the moment because we haven't got exhaust. That one out of the way. Still got to wire up the fused outlet here for the pump, but I think if we just tuck those underneath there, that'll work fine. And then basically, what have we got down here? That one I haven't got on yet. That is the connector down to the crank sensor down the bottom there somewhere. And then this is our power in, which is going to go nip across to the bus bar. This all works quite well here. What I've done is I've just stripped back the outer casing of the loom there just to give us a little bit more space so we can get onto our manifold air pressure sensor, and then that's the shield wire for that as well. So this just needs tidying up afterwards, as do the pump and injector relays and the fuse on that bit there. So they'll just have to get rewrapped, and then I'll probably mount those possibly somewhere off the bar there, I don't know. And then the only other thing I'm going to have to do is feed this back through the, that's the main plug for the ECU at that end of it. And down here we have got, that's the trigger wire from the Motor Gadget Blue. So it's basically just your switched ignition feed to make it all live. And that basically triggers then a relay back up there again. So that's that. And this one is not required. This is to the old fuel pump. We'd said that before, and then that's the 3-port valve. So I've got to run a lead back across to the Mac unit over there on the other side, not the gloves, or indeed the hat. And then all of this lot, this big fat lot, is going to go through that down there. but I am going to have to obviously protect the edge of that. And I've got a grommet here which I might use, which has got a split in it, so we should be able to get that over there. This grommet here I can't use because obviously we've got other wires going through there as well. So that one is loose and that will actually have to be cut off. That's where we're at. If we can get that through there, we are getting very close to getting some power into it. Might be able to get it turned over. I don't know, we'll see. Right, that's that little fuse fitted down there, which is powering the power steering pump. Quite a natty one, that, and it's got a nice little cap on it, so we can sneak it up out of the way. Ah, fucking thing doesn't shut. You fucking bastard. That's it. Little click on that, and in she went. Well, it's another night on it, and it's more wiring. There really is no end to it all. So what I've been doing tonight is looking at the coil, basically. So here we are. We've now got feeds which are kind of integral down to the what do they call that thing down there? It's the bloody amplifier. And then we've got a earth put in. I've pulled another earth around the front, so we're using this point here with a bit of earthing going on, and I've also put the earth in from the 3-port valve as well. So basically the valve and the coil are earthed up. We've managed to get this one plugged in over here. I wasn't sure what that one was. Anyway, looked back at the drawing and sure enough it was. So what I thought was actually a knock sensor wasn't. So anyway, that's correct. That goes back over to the ECU on the other side. And then down here we've got the feed for the coil. So that's coming from the back of the master switch. And then there's the yellow and black one. That is the output for the tacho down there. So that's all good on that one. And I've managed to feed those through and they disappear off down into the snake bit down there. So that's all good on that side of things. What isn't so good is the loom for the injectors, etc., everything, the sensors off the engine. That's all cool there. And this is what we had a look at before. But what I've tried to do, or what I was doing, was freeing up this main feed, which is going to go down to the bus bar at that end, which made kind of stripping back the casing off the loom. However, I had a bit of a peek through. I saw the red wire. I thought, well, if I just snip that one, I can pull that back. And lo and behold, I've cut the bloody wrong one. I think that is a feed up to one of the injectors. So I've just managed to get a bit of slack on it, and we're going to reconnect that together. And everything will be fine. There's not going to be any issues with anything. It's all good. I've just had that turbo gauge delivered, and I've just fitted that in there. So that's quite a nice little gauge. It's got a analog and a digital output on it. And we've gone again with black and white. And then I've mounted up the oil pressure gauge on the other side as well. So that instrument binnacle is now ready for wiring up and getting in the car. Let's have a look at a couple of jobs that we've been doing now then. Right, well, I've had to basically get a bit more wiring done here. So now we've got some feeds for the fan relay and the digital clocks as well. And then over here, what I've done is I've just made a little hole in the bulkhead and put one of these quite nice white blanking washers in. That's got a little hole in there. And what I'm going to do now is connect through to the heater, mechanical heater switch with the cable. Inside, you can just see where that is. So that's basically the water control, the heat control valve there that we had on before, and you can see the back side of that little grommet that I've put in over there. So what I can do now is feed through the it's like a bike brake cable really. That's going to go through there, and we can connect that up onto the back of the heater panel, and then hopefully that will get that into the right place. So it'll have to be trimmed because obviously at the moment she's way too long, but if I get that through from this side, get her offered up on this, and then we'll know what we've got to trim it down to. The other thing that I've been doing is working on the back of the clocks. So this is basically the plug which comes into the clock. So I actually bought this one because the one that comes with the clock, obviously that's already pre-wired. So I got one of these off Eric Bay, and that mates up nicely. So all we've got to do now, when the panel goes in, is just click that into the back of that little clock loom, and presto, she'll be away. This one just needs connecting down to the, I think it's the indicator switch. There's a couple more hanging down there which need to be connected up to the wipers and the light switch, things like that. So that's all cool, and then all of these other ones are ready to go into the back of our control panel. I've put an extra little earth in here which might just be handy for dropping some of the cables down to that. Obviously all of these are going to be pulled up out of the way afterwards, and then right at the back there you can see where the gear rod is going through the forest, through the bulkhead on that little rubber plate that we installed earlier. So if we can get all of those bits and bobs in place, I should be able to get that control panel, the center console in, and then hopefully we can then test some of those wires and just double check that everything's working okay. Another little one here, that little black box there is the starter solenoid, the starter relay which goes to the solenoid. So basically it outputs from the bottom of the Motor Gadget Blue, this very bottom terminal here, and then I've just run that through and it basically relays on. So there's two heavy duty cables which come off the bus bar, and then they go through that relay basically. So when the Motor Gadget decides that it wants to send a signal to start the car, it'll go to that relay, the relay will trip in, and then that'll pull heavier current from the bus bar and send that down to the actual solenoid on the starter. Now it could be powerful enough, the Motor Gadget, to actually send that straight down to the starter, but I don't know, maybe for a bike starter that'll be fine, but for a car I think it might just be trying to pull a bit too much ampage out of it. So in any event, one thing's led to another. I've put that relay in there, and that's going to more than be capable of handling those extra amps. I have also managed to sort out our good friend the injection loom. So that's where we had that open loom surgery before, and basically I've managed to sort out these relays as well, and we've got some power down there off the bus bar. Apologies for the light. Anyway, one thing's led to another. We've got that feeding back through into the main cabin area, and that means that we've got a few little connections to do inside on another day. And there they are. So that is basically the ECU loom coming in there, and a few other little wires and stuff. A lot of that, as we said before, is for the water pump. So I think that's the one I'm going to do next, try and tidy all that lot up under there. And then we are really going to be looking at getting the center console in and trying to get the digital dash in as well. So with that in mind, I want you guys to leave me to it. Stop contacting me and shouting at me to say, when's that car going to get ready? It'll be ready when it's ready, but we're getting very close now anyway. No, seriously, thanks for all the comments. I know it's taking a bit of time, but I am trying to get on with it as quickly as possible, which is proving tricky. And wiring is just, one thing after another, as we know. So with that, I'm going to say thanks for watching Otto's Garage. I'll catch you on the next episode, where hopefully we'll be a big step nearer getting that thing started up. All the best. Stay safe. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye!